I'm Mike Vardy, and I'm about to revisit a productive conversation with Neil Pasricha. Welcome to A Productive Conversation. This is a Flashback Friday episode, meaning we revisit an episode from the past and bring it back into the spotlight for another chance for you to check it out in case you missed it the first time around. And this time around, I'm joined by Neil Pasricha. He thinks, he writes, and he speaks about intentional living. Since we last spoke, when it was in 2019, when he released You Are Awesome, How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and Live an Intentional Life, which I think might be worth picking up at this time of year, just to kind of steel yourself for a busy holiday season, let's say, or to prepare for the year ahead. This is, if you're listening to this as it drops, but I mean, you could pick this up at any given time. But he's had another book come out since then called Our Book of Awesome, which is a celebration of the small joys that bring us together. I have to say that Neil is somebody, and you'll hear this through our conversation, that just radiates energy, like a really positive energy. And I think the world needs a lot of that. He's written 9 books and journals, which includes the Book of Awesome, right? And then all of the different books that are in that kind of chain of books. But his work really focuses on gratitude, happiness, failure, resilience, connection, and trust. And I figured now is as good a time as any to bring this episode back to the forefront so that you can check out the conversation that we had and realize that there's awesomeness all around us, including within you. So without further ado, let's revisit this conversation from 2019 that I had with Neil Pasricha on this Flashback Friday episode of A Productive Conversation. Neil, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So you've got a book, another book. Mark. For those that were not privileged enough to hear the preamble, we were talking about pronunciations. And mine, Vardy, is pretty easy to pronounce. But what they do is that people translate the R part to Mike, so it becomes Mark Vardy, which has happened on numerous occasions, both in print and audio-wise. Go ahead.
You know, well, like, Mike, I was laughing when you told me that people transpose the R from your last name and put it in your first name, because that's hilarious. But the funniest typo I often get on my last name, because my name is Neil Pasricha, is I get Neil Pastiche. And it took me a long time to figure out why. Pastiche. And you know why?
Autocorrect.
It's the autocorrect version of my name.
Because it happened to me. I dictated an email to you, and it didn't translate. And so I said, okay, well, let's do this. And it autocorrected to Neil Pastiche. And I'm like, that's hilarious.
Don't you love it when you know someone well enough that like your specific spelling or specific like inside joke gets autocorrected to that?
Yes. But what I hate is that my wife's name is Anne, and no matter what, it always says and. So I actually had to go into the iPhone settings and change the you know how you can do like pronunciation versions? I had to change it to the wife.
The wife.
So whenever I say like the wife is out of town, it sounds really like almost derogatory. It's like, oh God, but it translates it to Anne, which is hilarious.
That's so funny.
I had to do it. So
I had to go into the iPhone settings and, instead of Anne, I wrote the old ball and chain.
I could have done that, but that's too long. It's not efficient enough. So I want to, the book that I'm looking at right now, You Are Awesome, 9 Secrets to Getting Stronger and Living an Intentional Life. Right out of the gate, when Humble the Poet, who's been on the show as well, said you got to talk to each other. I'm like, great. I've read your works up to this point. So when I was going through the introduction, what I didn't necessarily recognize is what each of the books that led up to this one, at least the Book of Awesome and the Happiness Equation led to. So this book is, when you look at a face value on the cover, like You Are Awesome, it's like, okay, but really there's a much deeper message here that is permeated throughout the book through the nine arrows and stuff. Can we talk about what the book ultimately is really about and then dig into that a bit?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the book is ultimately about resilience. And actually, unfortunately, Mike, since the time you got that version, which is the galley copy or the early reading copy, and to the time the book's going to get published on November the 5th, we actually changed the subtitle. So now the subtitle is, it's still You Are Awesome, But the subtitle is now, and this is more informing your listeners, it's called How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and Live an Intentional Life. The Book of Awesome, my first book was about gratitude. The Happiness Equation, my most recent book, is about happiness. And You Are Awesome, my latest book, is about resilience. And when people say, "Oh, Neil, like why you switching from happiness to resilience?" It's like, no, I didn't go looking for resilience. Resilience came to me because I would be giving speeches about happiness, and sure enough, when you get off a stage, the 12 people who are really interested that run up to you with the question, and I start getting this question, and I'll put it into like a form of a story because this is what happened. Like a 50-something guy in like a suit, a super kind of like successful guy, like runs up to me after, and he's like, Neil, what's wrong with my son? How do I fix it? I was like, excuse me? He's like, what's wrong with my son? I need your help. What's wrong with my son? I'm like, well, what is wrong with your son? And he's like, well, he went to high school. He graduated. He was the captain of his football team. I was like, yeah. He's like, he's the valedictorian. I was like, yeah. He's like, he got straight A's. He's on D's list. He went to Duke. I'm like, wow, Duke, congratulations. He's like, yeah, he just graduated with honors. I'm like, yeah. He's like, he started his first job, and on the first day, he got an email from his boss, which my son perceived as being rude. He called me that night crying. He couldn't get out of bed, and he didn't go to work the next day. He was so riddled with anxiety, with the idea or thought that he potentially failed at something because he was given presumably some type of feedback. And he's now like catatonic, like he can't function. And I was like, whoa. You know what's interesting, Mike, is that when I tell people that story, actually almost everyone I tell it to has some sort of immediate resonance with it. They say, oh my gosh, my niece is so anxious. Or did you know 1 in 3 college students are now anxious? I'm like, why is that? And I look into the research, and turns out, and I'm worried about this too. Like, I'm worried about it for myself, and I'm worried about it for my own kids. And here's the problem. And this is my belief, but it's based on research. We live in the best time ever. That's a fact. We live in the best time ever to be alive. You can press a button, a car comes to your front door, takes you anywhere you want. You can eat any food from any grocery store. You go to the grocery store, there's all this food from any country. You go to a restaurant, you can order. You and I could right now decide that we're going to go to Mongolia and hang out at the Four Seasons tomorrow. And if we had the resources to do it, we could actually physically do it because the world will conspire to help us. There are planes. You can buy a ticket. You can rent a room. Like, the world is awesome. We live in the most abundant time ever. Okay? We trust the water out of our taps. We feel safe when we front door. Any sort of your religion, your sexuality, you're not persecuted for that stuff. Like, we good. We're good with you. You're awesome here. But at the same time, Mike, and on the opposite end of the scale, we've got highest ever rates of anxiety, loneliness, suicide, depression, mental illness. What is going on? I mean, honestly, what is going on? And I think the root of it is that because life is so easy right now, I mean, relatively easy. We don't have any famines. No one's getting shipped off to war. There's no economic depression. We're not going through anyone that has the plague. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're good. Infant mortality has never been lower, et cetera, et cetera. We actually we no longer have the tools to handle failure or even perceived failure. So these days, when you get 2 likes on your Instagram photo, you think, I'm a loser with no friends, right? When you get a nasty email from your boss, or even a potentially normal email from your boss with feedback, and I didn't actually see the email in that story, you can't go to work the next day because you're so worried about it. And this is a problem. And so I look at my own kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my little boys, they're 5, they're 3, they're 1. I mean, how do I help them go from failure prone to failure proof, from fragile to anti-fragile, from thin skin to thick skin? How do I toughen them up? Because the world, by the way, you know this, the world is going to tell you that you suck over and over again. The deodorant ad is going to tell you you stink. The magazine advertisement is going to tell you you're not pretty. The social media follower counts are going to tell you you don't have enough friends. Literally everything in our world, all of our systems, all of our advertisements, all of our design is conspiring to tell you suck. It's true. That's why they get you to buy anything. You suck at this, so now you need fresh breath or whatever you need. And so I know the world is challenging, and yet I don't know what the tools are to toughen ourselves up so that when we fall on the sidewalk, we can get up. We don't just lie there crying. And so I spent the last few years of my life writing the follow-up to the happiness equation. So that book came out in 2016. It took me 3.5 years. And this book, You Are Awesome, is all about resilience, specifically the 9 things people can do to harden themselves and toughen themselves and develop that so we're not just like porcelain dolls.
What I love about the book as you go through it is there's research, which you've done, but the stories, often when you read books that are, let's categorize, if we want to throw them in it, like nonfiction books, if we're going to talk self-development, personal development, whatever you want to say, there's a lot of anecdotes.
Self-help.
Self-help, whatever. They often have other people's stories. But yours, I mean, between the research pieces, it's your story, and you talk about because I think a lot of people when you're an authority or you have expertise in this area, has he faced this? You've faced a ton of this, adversity, and you've had to foster resilience along the way, right?
Absolutely. The reason I even wrote the Book of Awesome was 10 years ago. My wife left me. My marriage ended. My best friend took his own life. I had no house. I had no place to live. I had no friends because my social network was through that relationship. I had 6 contacts in my phone. I lost 40 pounds due to stress. Everyone at work thought I was on some keto diet, because you lost all this weight. And that's why I started my blog, 1000 Awesome Things, to cheer myself up. I wrote that every day for 4 years, and that formed the Book of Awesome. That's one example. I mean, in the book, I also share other traumas and shames, and we could go into them if you want. But yeah, the reason I'm even writing today, and it might look like a nice natural arc, all these books on intentional living. I didn't know it was an arc. I just was trying to help myself. And same with this book. This is just me trying to give myself a prescription because I'm worried about myself. So let's start with that. Make it selfish first. And then, as you know, selfish art sometimes resonates with other people.
One of the things that as you were talking about resilience in the book, I started to think, I'm a word nerd, and we're going to get into the ellipses here in a little bit, because that was something that I'm like, I love that. Because when I send an email or when I do a Facebook update or something, I always put the ... In fact, we were talking about the iOS thing. And one of the things I do say is when I'm dictating something, I go ... And people go, just say ellipses. I'm like, no. ... does the same thing. It takes care of it. The word resilience versus say the word grit, right? Because we or perseverance. There's got to be, what's the distinction that you carry between that word and say like grit or perseverance or any word that might be kind of confused with it? Because I think there are distinctions.
Resilience means how to get back up. So resilience carries inside the word the presumption that you have fallen, that you have failed, that you have tripped, or that you have slipped, that you have somehow gone down a notch, or someone dumped you, you got fired, your spouse asked for a divorce, you dreamed of going to Harvard and you channeled your entire 5 years of high school towards it and you got rejected. So I see grit and determination as being like and failure and resilience actually carries inside that word some failure and then failure recovery.
So let's talk about the ellipses now, because I think that...
By the way, I don't think the definition of perseverance in the dictionary has a bunch of grunts. That was just my paraphrase.
Yeah, the Audible version might, but that's... So
that would be a great book, the Audible version of the dictionary.
Yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah, Audible Webster's, it'd be great. Especially you could hear because then you can hear nuance, right?
And the voice is very important there.
Right. And I think that when you're talking about the idea of the ... let's go there first, because there's 9 arrows, there's 9 secrets that you're talking about in this book. But the ... caught me right away, because the idea of you don't know, which is both freeing but also terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah, so the book has 9 secrets in it, and actually, Mike, there was a structure that we got removed just to make the book. I always try to crank the dial on accessibility and simplicity as high as I can. Sometimes that means sacrificing a little bit of the book's structural complexity. So a little bit of behind the scenes for the listeners is the original totems were the first 3 secrets were called As You're Falling, the middle 3 secrets were called At the Bottom, and the final 3 secrets were called Getting Back Up. Okay. But we removed that to be a little bit more simple. And the first secret now is called Add a ... I use the story of my mom's traumas, many of them being born the wrong gender in a culture that was expecting and wanted a boy. Added to that, a dictator taking over, East Africa, her father dying at a young age. her being married off to a man she met once into an arranged marriage, moving to a continent that she'd never been to before, in a city where she knew nobody, in a town that was 100% white when she was brown, where everybody ate meat and she was vegetarian, so she had to eat meat. There's like no choice. And basically, literally every time that happens, like she hit another wall, I saw in my mom her change the period at the end of her sentence, and I'm using that word sentence kind of purposefully to the two meanings of it, like a sentence and a sentence, like a prison sentence.
I gotcha.
Yeah. I'm like, did I explain that really badly?
Did I get this? Did I get it? Yeah, no, I got it.
Like,
I got it.
My guest got that before you explain it 3 times.
If you did not get that, email me at podcast@productivity.com and we'll straighten it up for you.
I was like, I'm just like, no, this is just me kind of talking in circles around myself. But here's the thing. She always turned the period into a ... And she often did this by inserting the word yet, Y-E-T. So when it's like, I don't eat meat, in her mind, she thought, I don't eat meat yet. When my dad, who she met, like I said, a couple times, like that's it, and they got married, he's like, well, let's go ballroom dancing at the German club. She's like, well, I don't waltz yet. And this interesting little word, 3 letters, Y-E-T, you said you're a word nerd. It's like, isn't it amazing that adding that word to the end of a sentence can actually be the difference between I will never do something and I might?
Absolutely.
I don't know Spanish yet. I don't like tofu yet. I can't speak Japanese yet. I'm not creative yet. I'm no good at relationships yet. I'm not nice to my mom yet. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so he did this little thing, and it was a magic mental trick. And so the book opens with that because I want to address people who are, like I was, at that sort of bottom. You know, if you literally just lost your job, or just lost your relationship, or just lost your home, or just lost something, and we all lose things, just broke a bone, just whatever, then I want you to remember the very first step on resilience is simply choosing to keep going.
One of the things that people try to do when they are trying to make big gains or become awesome is they try to do awesome things. And when I'm saying awesome, I mean like things that are just so big that they almost seem insurmountable. You know, once you're into it, you're like, oh, this is bigger, we see this on to-do lists all the time. Like, for example, me, write book. That's just, your brain looks at that and goes, what?
Yeah.
Whereas as opposed to the idea of the small steps. And you talk about steps in the book as well, and the importance of those. Can we dig into that idea a little bit as well? Because I think that a lot of people, when they're thinking about, you know, how that they are awesome and there's these things that they want to do and they haven't done these things yet, instead of going, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, do all of this now, there's got to be some steps along the way, right? Not just to take something on, but also as your life progresses, everything is like is a step.
Well, here's the thing. I think of life like a staircase, and the beautiful thing about the staircase is that let's think of every step on that staircase as like a year of your life. Well, with any luck, you'll get another step, you know, every single year until you die. The unfortunate part about the staircase is when you look behind you, you can see it. You can see all the steps behind. You can see your prom night. You can see your first relationship. You can see when you got your driver's license, whatever. But when you look ahead, it's invisible. The whole thing you can't see because you don't know what tomorrow looks like. The problem is, and this is based on a research study published in Science magazine called The End of History Illusion. This report was done by Daniel Gilbert at Harvard University together with some colleagues. Daniel Gilbert, by the way, is known for writing the book Stumbling on Happiness. It turns out that our brains are all the same. When we have something go wrong, we believe history ends now. They interviewed 19,000 people for this study. They asked them, how was the last decade of your life? And everyone said, oh, tumultuous, up, down, left, right. I moved, I got a new job, I lost a relationship. And they said, oh, yeah. How about the next 10 years? What do you predict? And did you know, no matter how old the respondents were, whether they were in their 20s, 40s, 60s, whatever, they all said, oh, I already know that. The research says, yeah, what will the next 10 years be like? They said, it'll be the same as I am now. I'll be at the same company. I'm sure I'll stay at the same house. Certainly Cindy and I are in a long-term relationship. You know, and it's like, no. Based on the interviews, every 10 years is tumultuous in all of our lives. Always. There is no such thing as stasis. The problem is, when you lose a job, you think you're stuck there. You think, I'll never find work again. And our brains play a little neurological trick on ourselves, which is we confuse the probability of change with the picture ability of change. Okay, what do I mean? Well, I mean, you can't picture yourself getting a new job, so you don't think it will happen. We confuse the probability of it with the picture ability of it. You think, oh, I'll be combing Indeed.com ads in the basement of my parents' house for 25 years. That's not going to happen. No one's unemployed for 25 years looking for a job every day. Are you kidding me? It just doesn't happen that much. But you think it will every time if you lose your job. You get dumped. Even if you're 16 years old, you think, I'm unlovable. I'm not pretty. I'll never meet someone new. That was the love of my life. I'll never find someone again. They did a study in the Telegraph called, it's about how many one-night stands the average person has before they find long-term love. Turns out it's really high. and the average person gets cheated on, cheats on someone, has had 4 disaster dates, has had like 10 one-night stands, all this terrible stuff. And you ask anybody up front, you're like, hey, you want to do all that stuff? They're like, no way. But if you say, well, that's the path to a long-term love story, they're like, oh, see, our brains play a trick on us. We think we can't picture the future, so therefore we think it won't happen.
Right. Let's dive into Tim Urban stuff, because I'm a fan, and you talk about a little bit about it in the book, and the idea of, and I think the ego, Ryan Holiday talks about this stuff too, is I think ego can get in the way. And the idea of, one of the things that's kept me back, and I'll throw a little bit of personal stuff in here, is this book that I'm writing right now, and we're going through that process. It should have been written, in my mind, a long time ago. It's something that's been there, but there's been things that have, like, what are people going to say? There's lots of other books out there that talk about this stuff. And the ego tends to get in the way, both in terms of, everyone's kind of looking at me, but also I'm not good enough to do this. And that can be an impediment to the feeling of awesome. And it can also keep you from getting back up, right?
Absolutely. This is the thing. So you wrote on your thing, I love that you wrote on your whiteboard, write book. And the reason I laughed when you said that was not because I was making fun of you. It was more because, oh my gosh, the sheer overwhelmingness of that phrase,
Yep.
Like that would paralyze me. Write book?
Yep.
Do you know how long it takes to write a book? I would say, Tim Ferriss has a famous quote. I don't know if he borrowed it or if it's his, but he says, my goal is always write 2 crappy pages a day, right? So it was like 500 words, non-edited, terrible stuff. And if you can set your goal that low, then you can beat it. And suddenly on random days, you end up writing 10 pages.
Totally. So when one of the things you mentioned, I'll go back to the Tim Urban thing, the idea of the story that you're saying, hey, everyone's looking at me, effect. Right. And there's this idea of thinking that's going on can hold you back too, right?
So you talked about writing your book and how you were paralyzed by it because you were like, what do people think? What are people going to say? Et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing. There was a study that came out in the year 2000. There was the journal was called Current Directions in Psychological Science. These 2 guys, Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky, coined this new term. It's called the spotlight effect. So it's the feeling that we are being noticed, watched, observed, and judged much more than we really are. Because we are the centers of our own worlds, we think we are the center of everyone else's too. But the truth is we're not. And so they had these students get together and kind of rate themselves on their appearance or their skills in a video game and their athletic accomplishments. And then they said, well, what do you think? Here's how you rate yourself. And what do you think everyone else thinks? And what they wrote for how everyone else perceives them was much lower than they rated themselves. We think we are being unfairly and unjustly judged by other people. You mentioned Tim Urban a couple times. For anyone that may not know, he's the famous blogger behind the blog waitbutwhy.com. Maybe your listeners are all super familiar, but as we talked before, in any audience, you don't know how many people know this thing.
There'll be a link to it in the show notes for sure.
You love the blog. I love the blog. I think he's got a book deal, so I think he's working on a book, which will be awesome. He's a super, super great writer. And he illustrates his points with stick figures. And he has a famous post called Taming the Mammoth, or how we talk to the inner voice in our head that sort of thinks we're not good enough and thinks we're being judged. And in the end of that blog post, which is, by the way, is well worth the read, it's got hundreds of thousands of shares on Facebook. It's a very, very popular, millions of hits kind of post. And and you'll put it in the show notes. He's got 2 cartoons. One is called How We Think Things Are. And it's literally a stick figure of you and you're red, and every other stick figure is looking at you and just staring at you. And one guy at the back is saying, move over, I can't see him. But then the second cartoon is based on the same research of the spotlight effect, how things actually are. And it's you in the center of a room, and every single person around you, all the stick figures, are just walking around aimlessly looking at their cell phones. And the caption, of course, Tim is such a great writer. He wrote, "No one really cares that much about what you're doing. People are highly self-absorbed." So blunt and so true.
Yep.
We put the spotlight effect. You know what? People don't care about your book. I hate to say it, Mike, and people don't care about mine. They don't care about that, your book or mine. They care about their book. But we think that people care about ours. And actually, if they're going to buy your book or my book, it won't be because they care about you or your book. It'll be because they believe the messaging in the book will help them. They believe the story that's in the book will take them somewhere else. They believe it'll be a nice compliment to their beach vacation. They believe they will have something interesting to talk about at the book club. It's all about them. We are naturally selfish beings. Let's not deny it. Let's embrace it, and let's function and talk about it openly.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today. Okay, we're going to take a break from the conversation, but when we get back, I'm going to talk with Neil about the importance of failure. I wonder if he journals. We're going to find out. And also the day that Neil themes, because he uses daily themes as well, but a little bit differently than I do. So we'll get back to that after we talk about a way that you can kind of keep track of your days in a much smarter, more powerful way. And that's with Woven. Woven Calendar is designed for busy professionals like me, like you, who want to make the most of their time, because time is money for you and for me. Woven Calendar takes the hassle out of scheduling by combining powerful scheduling tools like Woven Smart Templates, scheduling links, and group polls into a smart, collaborative calendar. With Woven, everything you need to schedule fast is at your fingertips. I am absolutely in love with Woven. I use it to schedule calls with my coaching clients. I use it to schedule calls with my podcast guests. I use it more and more every single week because it has just really revolutionized the way that I'm able to define my days, filter my focus, and make every moment matter. As an iOS user, I can use the dedicated iMessage app to schedule via text, and I'm just starting to explore Siri shortcuts, and Woven has support for that as well via voice command, and I love to talk. So I think you should really give Woven a try. You can add it to your productivity stack right away. Just go to woven.com/timecrafting and sign up for Woven today. You will not regret it. Your days will be better with Woven as your calendar of choice. If you're anything like me, you get a lot of email. A lot of email. And there's a chance that you can miss some important emails because of your overloaded inbox. Wading through forests of unread emails, tons of newsletters and follow-ups to find the one email you're looking for is a very frustrating experience, and it certainly is not productive. Seeing the number of unread emails growing every day is stressful, overwhelming, and taking the time to go through everything is a waste of time and energy and your attention. So the folks at Clean Email have come up with a solution, and it's a real game changer. First, Clean Email organizes all of your emails into smart views like social notifications, newsletters, unread emails, emails from project management tools, top senders, and so much more. I've just started to put Clean Email through the paces, and I'm seeing a definite impact on how much time I'm spending in email, searching, exploring, and just being in email in general. And the proof is in the pudding. See, with Clean Email, you can quickly take care of those thousands of emails in your inbox, marking them as read, archiving them, labeling, moving them around, by hundreds or even thousands all at once. It's a real time saver. And if you get a lot of newsletters like I do and do a lot of research, this can be a huge game changer for you. Here's something that's really cool. Once Clean Email has gone through your inbox, you can then set up auto clean filters to automatically archive or move emails around as they arrive. Now, here's an example of one feature that I really like. It's the ability to auto archive emails as they become older than a couple of months. Now, I don't leave a lot of emails in there that long, but for those that I've missed, let's say again, newsletters that I might have wanted to read or something like that, it's really, really helpful. And you can also use Smart Unsubscriber to keep your mailbox clean from newsletters that you're not reading anymore or noisy marketers that can infiltrate your inbox. Clean Email was designed with your privacy and security of your data in mind. Since they are in the business of providing a great service in exchange for a fair fee, they guarantee not to sell or analyze your data. They are verified by Yahoo and Google and support all email providers out there. So here's what I want you to do. If you are tired of having an email inbox that is more like a jungle than a haven, then I want you to visit clean.email/timecrafting and get 50% off the 5 accounts annual package. That's a big deal. And since we spend a lot of time in email, saving time there is a big deal as well. So go to clean.email/timecrafting and get that 50% off the 5 accounts annual package today. You know what else is awesome? Education, continuing education. And the UCI Division of Continuing Education is here to help you with that awesomeness. See, the UCI Division of Continuing Education offers courses and certifications taught by industry practitioners in a wide range of categories, from business and leadership to tech, project management, law, engineering, human resources, and over 60 convenient certificates and specialized studies programs, both on campus and online, designed for the working professional like you. 100% online courses offer convenience and flexibility and a real immersive online classroom experience where you can even collaborate with your peers. And there's open enrollment. What that means is there's no application to complete at all. You just log in and sign up. You can advance your career in as little as 6 months. That's a huge time saver to becoming awesome, right? And you can pay for a single course or enroll in an entire certificate program. You have full control over your academic plan. And here's the thing. The UCI Division of Continuing Education can help you gain an edge in your career. They can help you make a career transition or simply help you become more knowledgeable. If you want to take advantage of this awesomeness today, registration's open. So visit ce.uci.edu/productivityist and enter the promo code TIMECRAFTING for 15% off of one course. That's ce.uci.edu/productivityist, promo code TIMECRAFTING, and get 15% off of one course. Now, this offer is only valid until December 31st, 2019 at 11:59 p.m. So you want to do this now. Go be more awesome and register for a UCI Division of Continuing Education program today. Now let's get back to this awesome conversation I'm having with Neil Pasricha here on the Productivityist podcast. I want to talk about the idea of failure, because that's what we've kind of, the crux of resilience. You said falling down and then getting back up. And failure is a big. There's actually a friend of mine here in Victoria who I had the pleasure of sharing the stage with for TEDx Victoria, Adam Creek, who's an Olympian, and he talks about the idea of failure and the power of it. You mentioned athletes, right? And we hear this a lot of time, like the best hitters in baseball are 300 hitters. So they're missing the ball 70% of the time. And, all that stuff going on. What I think, and Seth Godin, the idea of how many things he's built and created that, are so revered, but yet there's things that he's done that have kind of failed. Tim Ferriss, another great example. And there, anyone who's really pushed forward with stuff, they've built something amazing, but you don't see the stuff that they didn't build. You don't see that behind the scenes. I think that's a message that people really need to hear, is the idea that, and then I want to get into the choosing the right things to chase. But can we dig into that a little bit? The idea of failure is important.
Well, on chapter 1, page 141 of the book, I have a chapter headline that says, "What do wedding photographers, the T1000, and Nolan Ryan have in common?" And I don't know if you've ever done this, Mike, but like sometimes I see like someone's amazing wedding photos, and I say to the photographer, "Oh my gosh, how did you take 50 beautiful pictures?" And you know what they say to me? I've asked a lot of photographers this. They say the same thing. They say, "Oh, I just take way more pictures. I took 1,000 photos at the wedding. So of course, 1 in 20, literally 50 of them are going to be awesome."
Mm-hmm.
You and I, when we go out and take pictures, you take 1 photo or you take like 10, but you don't take 1,000, Nolan Ryan. Let's stick with that. You mentioned sports. I got this little book when I was a kid. My dad, it was like, I guess before like Wikipedia and before the internet. So my dad got me like a book of statistics. And so I would pore over this book of baseball statistics. I loved baseball. And it was really like, I felt smarter, I guess, knowing like, Hank, who hit the most home runs and how many did he hit and all this stuff. I was about to start quoting the numbers, and I was realizing that was going to be super nerdy, and I might get them wrong now. So I noticed something. Nolan Ryan had the most strikeouts ever, and I think he still holds the record. It's 5,714. But then I looked on the most walks page. Like, it was a weird baseball stats book. I was like, they're keeping track of walks? Sure enough, walks are bad. But he had the most walks too, which is 2,795. I was like, that's weird. The guy kind of considered like the best pitcher in baseball at the time, like the most strikeouts of anyone. He also has the most walks, like literally the best possible stat and the worst possible stat. He owns both of them. And I looked more into this and I realized, the Cy Young Award, the best pitcher every year in baseball. Well, it's named after a guy, right? A real guy named Cy Young. You may know he has the most wins of all time, which is 511, which is astounding. But interestingly, you may not know, he has the most losses too, 316. And so when I get a little bit frustrated when I watch like Sunday Night Football and they always say something like Tom Brady like broke the record for most yards, or like, or Drew Brees has, I'm like, no, man, they're just old. Like, if you looked at how many Tom Brady probably has the record for most missed passes too. Yeah. Probably has the record for like most, whatever the worst stat you could think of.
Brett Favre's revered. He's a Hall of Famer, or a potential Hall of Famer at this point. He has led in touchdowns, I think, for a long time, but he also led in interceptions.
Right, exactly. So like, we are putting people on pedestals. That's fine. But my point is, if you want to be in a pedestal, all you have to do is triple your loss rate, quadruple your loss rate. Then your win rate will naturally go up. I said to my little cousin, he wanted to be a YouTuber. And so he sent me like 2 or 3 of his YouTube videos, and they were okay. They were good. But I was going to be honest with him. So I said, hey, Ben, do you want to be like what's your goal here? He's like, I want to have like 1 million subscribers. I want to be like Lily Singh. And I was like, okay, I know exactly what you need to do, but I don't know if you can do it. She said, what is it? I said, make 1,000 YouTube videos. I said, it might take you a few years, but by the time you're done that, I guarantee you'll have like 1 million subscribers. Like, by then you will have figured out how to do it. You will know the secret sauce. You will have learned so much, and you'll have put it so much out there that maybe 1 in 100 of your videos goes viral, but that's enough to gain another 100,000 new subscribers. Look, I wrote 1,000 awesome things on my blog. That's the name of my blog. Do you think they were all good? Lots of them stunk. Lots of them were terrible. But because I had a post called Old Dangerous Playground Equipment, number 980, it was my 20th post. It went viral. So my first 20 posts got 10 hits each. Then my 20th got 50,000. And 5,000 of those people stayed along for the ride and developed a base level of readership that I never lost. And then every time I had a viral post, another 5,000 stuck around. By the end of my blog, 50,000 people were reading every day. But it took a lot of work, maybe 1 in 100 posts actually going viral.
Yeah, and that's we hear that, the 10,000 hour rule, right? Gladwell's talked about that. Like, it's you put in the time, but you're right. You don't see what goes on behind the scenes of the failures and how you feel about them too. I think that's the other thing, right? Obviously the blog is an outlet for you and was an outlet for you, but do you keep a journal? Do you keep like a journal to kind of say, hey, so you do? Okay.
I keep 3.
How's that look? Okay. How does that whole process?
So here's the thing, like, as someone who researches positive psychology and writes about it, essentially for a living. Yep. I feel like it would be hilarious if I didn't journal, because there's no study with more impactful results than all these studies done on journaling. The power of it. It turns out, and just quick summary for those that may not know, your brain has a visual cortex. In that visual cortex, you got an area called Area 17. When you listen to an awesome podcast, Area 17 lights up. If at the end of the night you journal about that, even just writing down, like I love Mike's show. He had Humble the Poet on it. I learned something. I learned a great quote and I found a great book, whatever. If you write about that experience, your mind actually relives it. Your brain does not know the difference between what's happening in real life and what you're writing about, because you get lost in your mind. It's why you can fall into a good book. Same thing. But if you read your own journal, then you're also tripling it. You get a tripling effect. So we know how powerful the journaling research is. So I do 3 things. Number 1, I've actually printed my own journal. I did it with Chronicle Books. It's called 2 Minute Mornings, and it's based around a chapter in this new book, You Are Awesome. And it's a 2-minute morning practice based on science where every single morning I wake up and I fill out 3 simple prompts. They are, I will let go of, I am grateful for, and I will focus on. That's how I start my day. It takes 2 minutes. You're awake for 1,000 minutes a day. So I say this is a 0.2% lever to make the other 99.8% of your day happier. The second thing I do is I subscribe to an online service, which is free. You can put it in the show notes. It's called ahlife.com. AHHLIFE. You set the time and frequency. I chose Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. They email you with a prompt that you reply to over email, and it keeps the repository online. Some people are like, oh, I don't trust this online website. Fine. But if you just read your own sent items from your own inbox, you will find your own journal entries. It's just a therapeutic practice in your email. And the third and final thing I do, Mike, because you asked, is I keep a gigantic blank pad of paper, essentially free farming. And I use this almost like where some people might pop a Valium or pop an Ativan or something. I will actually pull out the pad and just free form write if I'm feeling anxious or stressed. And by the time I'm done a page or two, it's gone every time.
Yeah, journaling, it's one of those things that I think is highly undervalued for productivity too. Because I mean, you can look at your calendar and to-do list and get a sense of things, but it's the content, the emotional component, the things like where I can say, hey, I had a great conversation with Neil today. But if I looked at the calendar and just saw, oh yeah, Neil was on the show, like it doesn't create the same kind of resonance, right? And
so what's your journaling practice?
So it's part of my evening routine. I'm a night owl, so I don't journal in the morning. I journal in the evening, and it's also to get my brain to kind of close out the day, because otherwise I'd be lying in bed. Do you remember the grunting that you talked about when it came to grit? I'd be like lying there going, I can't sleep, right? And so at the end of the day, I do the following. And we're going to talk about theming days here in a second, because you've got a specific type of day that you like to put in place. But I ask myself, what was today? Today was Thursday, let's say, as we're recording this. What's the theme of today? Today was learning day. Did I make learning my overarching focus for the day? Yes or no? Yes, I did.
Wow,
right?
That's cool.
And then what I can do is if it says no, well, why? Well, because, I was traveling. Oh, well, if I need that much structure, I can do it, but I'm not married to it. So, some days I will just freeform say, I felt like crap today. My wife and I had an argument. I don't know why that happened. Or my kids are, I'm feeling like I'm not being that great at what I'm doing with my kids. Or I felt like, we went to the water slides and it was great. And so sometimes it depends, but the thing is, I have to make it consistent. Like it has to happen every night. And I almost always attach a photo to it, because just in case it's like that third fail safe, if I don't decide to use like the themed component, or I don't want to I just don't have anything off the top of my head that I want to write about, I can just look through my phone and say, oh, what did I take a photo of today? And I almost take photos now as that third fail safe. Like today, my
what do you do with the pictures?
What do I do with them?
Yeah, where do they end up living forever, if anywhere?
So day one is the journaling app that I use. I use because I can also dictate, but I also keep what I'll do with those is I have an album in the cloud or whatever that's called and I use the layout app that you can get that you normally would post to Instagram, because that's what it's for. I just take that photo and use that. So I have a whole album, because layout creates an album. And I know that the layout album is all the photos that have gone inside of. So today I've already taken a picture. My wife she goes to the Yukon once a month to do acupuncture.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. So that's where she's from. And she's got like a good clientele up there.
Hey, you're on the West Coast, B, yeah. She's from there. Yeah. I'm certain it just sounded funny.
Well, no, but the other thing is, those tailors that show up, at hotels like once per month, and they say, hey, we're in town. We've got these custom fittings. Book your appointments now. And you go in and you're like, okay, yeah, this person comes. She's kind of like that person that shows up in town for like 4 days, and there's like 3 acupuncturists in Whitehorse, maybe. So she's booked. Like she's on a plane right now as we're speaking. She'll land, and within an hour of landing, she's at her clinic that she works at. She works at a spa, and she'll be booked solid from today all the way through until when she leaves, to an hour before she leaves to catch a plane back here to Victoria.
Wow.
So that's what she does. And it basically is well worth the trip. But what I did today is I dropped her off at the ferry terminal. It was like she had to be on the 7 a.m. ferry. So I got her there like 6:30. But as she was walking away and was in the distance, I just took a picture, because I know that, so it's just like, I want to remember that, how I felt when she left, because it's never fun. But, and I'm home with the kids. So, and it's meet the teacher night tonight. So there's both of them.
Yeah, you missed that.
So yeah, so it's all that stuff. So I try to have three components, and they all kind of, which again is kind of like the theming component that I talked about. Like, so I have the daily theme, right? So my daily theme is learning day today. But so that's where my brain will immediately go, okay, it's time to learn. What have I tagged that's learning? And then I look at that, and then there might be another criteria. So if I've got like 40 learning things that I've listed in my to-do list, I'm like, well, how do I feel? I feel like I've got a lot of energy. Great. Let me look at all the high energy learning I can do. And then it whittles it down even further. So
do you ever feel constrained by your structure?
No. You know why? Because it's not, I wouldn't say it's optional, but it's layered enough and nuanced enough that I can let it go if I need to. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I don't look at it.
You know that it's just for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that nobody's looking over your shoulder to make sure you did it. You don't have there's no one cracking away. You're not one of those people. And I know people like this, like Marshall Goldsmith, who's a very famous author who wrote the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, amongst other books. He said on a stage, I saw him say this, so I know it's public. Because otherwise I wouldn't just tell it. He said, I pay somebody money to call me every single day and ask me 3 questions. And he told us the questions, and I forget what they are, but it's something like, what is your goal today? What is your next step to accomplishing that goal? Did you accomplish your goal from yesterday? Like literally something as simple as that. It was like just like that. And he's like, I pay someone to do that because I know that phone call's coming. I know I have to answer it. And by the way, I tell them if I don't answer, you have to keep calling me till I do. And when I get that call, it forces me to actually do it. I was like, whoa, what a crazy system. Mm-hmm. Also, imagine you just had the dough to just be like, I'll just pay someone to phone me. Hey, here's some money. Just phone me.
Yeah, I think Ramit Sethi had one where he had somebody that was paid to watch him blog or something like. There was a post from a long time ago where he needed to blog consistently, so he had someone that sat with him that did that. I might be wrong. It might not be Ramit, but if someone did, I'm pretty sure it was him.
Sounds like him.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that for me, and that's why when I talk to people about this, they're like, "Oh man, like you said, 7 days structured," and I have other things in there. They're like, "That must sound rigid." Like, there's a rigidity to it. I'm like, to me, it's my boundaries and it works for me. But when I teach someone like, "Hey, you should here's how daily theming works." Try it with 1 day. I don't say do all 7. So it's not like I started with 7 and got there. And actually, this is a nice little segue to this because you have a theme. You have a day that you kind of theme as well. Actually, spoiler alert, you might have more. We'll leave it at that. But let's talk about that one because I have what I call like tomorrow, which is Friday, is my deep work day, and it's very similar.
Right. So here's the thing. I used to work at Walmart. I worked there for 10 years, and I worked there. Sounds hilarious to me now in retrospect, but I worked there while publishing 5 books, giving 200 speeches on the side. So literally my side hustle was on the evenings and weekends, I'd fly to California and give a huge speech and be writing on the plane 10 hours, 5 hours each way. And then I'd come back to work Monday morning. People would be like, oh, how was your weekend? And I'd be like, they'd be like, oh, I went to a barbecue. What about you? I'm like, oh, I flew to California for an expensive speech and wrote my next 5 blog posts. People are like, who the hell are you? But anyway, I did that because I wasn't married. I told you I came out of that divorce and I had no kids. So for me, it's literally my evenings and weekends were just vacuous. They were empty. And so I filled them. And over time, I realized that after I met Leslie, and this was a few years later, and we got married and we had children, I was like, oh, I can't just kill my evenings and weekends anymore. I have a model about this actually in my last book, The Happiness Equation. I call it the 3-bucket model. A week has 168 hours in it. Divide by 3, it's 56, 56, 56. 56 hours for sleep, that's 8 hours a night. 56 hours for work, that's 8 hours a day, including 8 hours a day on the weekends. Let's add in your commuting time or your emails, whatever. And then 56 hours for fun. And my fun, my side hustle, whatever you want to call it, was writing and speaking. And then when I had kids, it was like, oh, I want to be there for bedtime. I don't want to be the kind of dad that's like, I got to go to the coffee shop. Put the kids to bed. I'm a super awesome dad. I think it'll be my greatest legacy. I'll be certainly a father a lot longer than I'm doing anything else. So it's important to me. And so suddenly the middle bucket of Walmart of the writing became stressed because I was trying to fit my writing and speaking into that bucket as well. So I did 2 tests on myself, and I recommend this for any listener if they're contemplating a career change, is ask yourself the deathbed question and the plan B question. The deathbed question is, what will I regret not doing more on my deathbed? And in my case, I was like, oh, writing books. And then the second question, well, what will I do if it fails? That's the plan B question. What will I do if this whole thing gets messed up? And, I become, no one buys my book, so I have to go back to work. And I thought, well, I've been having a great relationship with Walmart for 10 years. I think they'd take me back, even if it was at a lower position. So that gave me confidence. I'm kind of a relatively low confidence person. So that gave me confidence to be like, I can find another job. So I jumped. And when I jumped, meaning I quit my job, meaning I did what our mutual friend Chris Gillibo recommends, living the life of nonconformity, I suddenly found, hilariously, that my writing slowed down. A staggering realization for someone who quits their work to become a writer is that, suddenly I'm meeting with web developers and I'm like on a call for a conference. I'm speaking more. So it was just like literally I had no time to write. And so I had to, by force of necessity, create a day for myself I call untouchable days. I write them in all caps in my calendar, untouchable. It's the only thing I write in capitals on my iCal. I plan them out 16 weeks in advance, i.e., for me personally, it's the model. After the speaking calendar is pretty much set, but before my sort of personal, before all the little meetings have added in, and I block an entire day where I am 100% unreachable by anyone at any time. Zero internet, zero cell phone. I am untethered and off the grid. And even though I live in an urban environment, I can jump into a forest. I can end up in a bookstore. I can wander with cue cards in my pockets. They end up becoming my most creative, contemplative, and productive times because I zoom up to the captain's deck and I see if my ship's going the right way. Oftentimes it needs a little redirection, so I have an insight. And from an actual pure writing standpoint, when your phone and your internet are off, my writing went from 500 words a day to 5,000 words a day. 10x. Imagine 10 weeks worth of writing or 10 days worth in one day. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the secret ingredient. And I did a conversation this morning with a woman who hosts a show called Authentic Parenting. And her first question was, how do you get so much done? And honestly, Mike, the first thing I said to her is, untouchable days. That's how I came up with my 3 books and podcasts, came from untouchable days. This new book came from untouchable days. My new keynote speech came from untouchable. Every single thing I do in my life that's good comes from carving out one full day every week, unapologetically, fully blocked off. I will reschedule meetings. If I have to move the day to from a Thursday to a Friday, that's fine. If Malcolm Gladwell says yes, I'll interview with you on your show, but I can only do Thursday. Well, I'm gonna move my untouchable day.
Yep.
But I can't make it jump the weekends. I think of the weekends like bowling lane bumpers. The ball cannot jump lanes. The untouchable day can simply move within the week. It cannot jump a weekend. The beautiful part of that rule is, of course, when you actually plant the untouchable day flag, you actually feel the high off the increased productivity right away.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, so for example, our conversation today is happening on a Thursday. I don't do podcast interviews normally on Thursdays, but right? Because Wednesday is my listening day. So that's where I farm out. And so I actually have set up a structure where if people want to be on the show, and again, there's the exception to the rule, and you've got exceptions to your rule too, because it's like, okay, if Malcolm Gladwell says, hey, I can only do this day, you're going to move it. For me, it was like, hey, Humble said, hey, you should talk to Neil. I said, I'm not going to go.
I'm sorry, dude. I didn't know.
No. But here's the great thing is that because I have that freedom, I can say, okay, Neil's an outlier. Let's use him. He's an outlier in this equation. So I'm not going to go, hey, Neil, it'd be great to have you on the show. Here's a link. Go click on it because I don't want to be presumptuous in that case, right? So it's not like you came to me. So there's a different conversation there. And then I'm able to be more nimble, right? So by having that day of saying, this is the normal day that I do this stuff. Oh, this is an outlier. It becomes the exception to the rule. And then back to the journaling component we were talking about. If I all of a sudden am doing like podcast interviews all over the place and it's happening, I'm like, okay, is listening day still working? Like why am I doing things same thing with that deep work day? If I have too many things that have been accidentally bumped to that day, is Friday the best day for deep work anymore? So I'm kind of always looking at it, when I read my journal and saying, okay, wait a minute, I didn't get a lot of deep work done the last 4 Fridays. Why?
Right.
Like why? I'm evaluating it because it needs to work and it needs to be consistent. And this past week, I met with my video guy because we're going to be doing more video stuff. And he said, well, when do you want to shoot videos? And I instantly knew that Tuesday's the day that I like to do video stuff. So I said,
Why? How'd you know that?
Why did I choose that day?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mondays and Fridays, the kids can be home, and I didn't want to have their interruption because of Pro D days, right? My wife works Tuesdays and Wednesdays she's actually at her practice, so she's not home. Thursdays she is. So immediately that eliminates Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays for both video and audio. So then I had a choice. Do I want to do audio work on Tuesdays or Wednesdays? And I said, well, I've been doing it Wednesdays for a long time, so let's just leave it there. But Tuesdays would be a great day to film because nobody will be home. No holidays fall on a Tuesday. The kids won't be home unless they're sick. And if they're sick, I just, okay, that's life. That's what happens. So I was able to say to my video guy, can we shoot Tuesdays? He goes, well, when? I'm like, how about 10 to 2? Because my kids get home at 3. So he's great. So from 10 to 2, that's 4 hours of unfettered, uninterrupted time. And again, being on the West Coast is helpful because a lot of people I deal with might be on the East Coast. So by then they're already kind of wrapping up their day or in the latter part of their day. From 10 to 2, 4 hours of video work over the course of a 4-week span is 16 hours. There's a lot of stuff that I can do in 16 hours when it comes to YouTube content specifically. It's the same principles that apply so technically I've blocked off that time as untouchable other than for that particular type of stuff. So again, the great thing about this is it's personal, right? Like you have, I think productivity, and you allude to this in the book, the idea of productivity. And it's a chapter that, when you pick up the book, you got to read because the idea of intentional living, my definition of productivity is intention plus attention. What's my intention? How am I going to pay attention?
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
And so for me, that's how do I pay attention is the important part, because I think what happens a lot is you have all these intentions, but you have no attention. So those intentions are powerless. And but what we end up doing is having our attention and we pay it to things we have no intention of really doing, or they're at our deeper intention. So our attention is aimless, right? So I need to have both of those in place. And I think everybody does. It's just, how do they do it? Some people use systems that are already in place that might be too rigid. So they got to massage it. I was talking to a guy on the way back from Santa Barbara, and he said, oh, you do this for a living? And I said, yeah. And you've had a great conversation with somebody, you talk about a plain conversation as well in the book. But he said, oh, you're a time management guy. He goes, have you heard of the Pomodoro technique? I'm like, yes. And for those who haven't, it's 25 on, 4 on, 25 on repeatedly, and then you take a larger break. He said, well, I kind of do it. He says, I do 50 minutes on and 10 minutes off because I'm a coder and I need the first 20 minutes or so to kind of figure out what I need to do and the rest of the time to do it. And I said, well, you're doing the Pomodoro technique then. He goes, yeah, I guess. I go, yeah, you're doing it your way. Like you're taking the framework and then adapting it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
These systems are all just aids to help you form your own insightful rule that helps you.
Right.
And ultimately, they enable massive mental laziness for me because when I have an untouchable day coming up, there's nothing else I can do. I mean, I guess I could go see a movie or something, but I guess I have to write. Like, I have no meeting scheduled and I have nothing planned with anyone. So I'm like, well, the quote unquote right book on the whiteboard actually gets a little, I chip away at it because I have got nothing else to do and I can't go on the internet, So anyway, that's exactly what it was. By the way, hilariously, that quote that you mentioned is so interesting because it reminds me, I've never talked about this before, but when I graduated from high school, everybody left like a quote in their yearbook or maybe like, this is before emojis, or like, Sarah, I love you, or whatever. So everyone got like, less than a tweet, we got like to put in the yearbook. And so mine was a quote by Mary Beard that said, action without education is fatal. Education without action is futile.
Yeah. And
that's not a direct composite of the quote you mentioned, but it felt like a corollary. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, and when I thought of that quote, it was based on, and this is how these things get put together. You need that space. John Cleese has this great YouTube video. I'll link to it. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
I wrote about it in the Happiness Equation.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So for me, I was looking at Wayne Dyer's The Power of Intention, and I thought, and I just finished reading or hearing about Tim Ferriss getting asked again one more time how come he called his book The 4 Hour Work Week and how dare he, and he basically said, look, he basically laid it out as to what, look, it sells books, right? The 4 Hour Body sells books. This is what this means, right? So when I was reading The Power of Intention, seeing the book title, I'm like, The Power of Intention, yes, intention has power, but only if you give it the attention that it needs. Otherwise, it's powerless. And then from there, it kind of spiraled into the idea of, intention without attention is powerless. Attention without intention is aimless. because we spend a lot of time, and those days, those untouchable days, and for me, the theme days as a whole, they give me an aim, because otherwise, like you said, you'd go to the movie. If I don't have anything on my schedule today, well, I guess I'm just going to go to the movie. Or the great thing about theme days for me is that, when they're like kind of in the just right factor. So today is my learning day. Well, once the kids I'm going to meet the teacher night tonight. I'm like, hey, great. It falls perfectly on my learning day because I'm going to learn about right. So I try to apply those broadly, not just to work, but to personal life. And so when I choose things like that way it's a way of operating, right? Because much like, eating healthy, it's not a diet thing. It's a lifestyle thing. And productivity is a lifestyle thing. And one of the things that you talk about in the book, as we close to wrapping up here, is, and I loved it, because people tend to think productivity is about going as fast as possible, getting as much done as possible, checking off as many boxes as possible. But you got to slow down. You get into that. So can we dig into the idea of because that's a big piece, and I'd love to touch on that a little bit before we wrap up.
Well, sure. And so it's called Productivityist, right? So did you know, you probably did, and most people probably don't, and I didn't know this, that we have never been more productive in the history of our society. So McKinsey has this famous white paper. It looked at all the G7 countries, looks at the average productivity per employee from like the 1950s up every decade till today. Turns out we have never been more productive ever than now. Okay. And maybe you're surprised by that, or maybe you're not. The other problem, though, and I would like to label this a problem, is because we've had decades of what I call screw tightening. I'm talking layoffs, right sizing, efficiency, streamlining, mergers, acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know, everyone's worked in a company knows. Suddenly the guy beside you gets turfed. They don't replace him or her. And where's that work got to go? And so that natural screw tightening that's happened over 20, 30, 40 years means that A, we are more productive, but B, we're suffering from burnout more. And C, we have no space. Do you know how like the old mental image of like an office in the 80s and 90s used to be like a bunch of people hanging out at the water cooler? Mm-hmm. Like there was that cliche, like, oh, it's water cooler talk. There's no water cooler anymore. Like there's no, in any organization, there's less hallway talks, meandering. And yeah, so I interviewed Chris Anderson of TED and I always say of TED because there's like that other there's two Chris Andersons.
Yep.
And so I interviewed Chris Anderson of TED for 3 books, my podcast, and he told me that the design of TED is purposefully incongruent with lots of different lectures from lots of different people over lots of different days, so that by the end of it, the incongruencies and the conversations and the breaks, etc., have formulated some new idea or thesis or direction in your mind. There has been time and space and incongruency that allows you to congeal into something more pure. Because we're all working so much and working so long, and again, there's no space. We don't have time to go for a nature walk at lunch, which, by the way, would be probably the best thing to do to increase your productivity at night or in the afternoon. And I can talk about why if we have time. Ultimately, though, the gas from trees reduces your cortisol, and we all have NDD, or what I call nature deficit disorder. So that's just one example. But like, if I said to you at an office, if you said, what's your best prescription for getting more done or not feeling so burnt out, or I'm always jonesing for like a donut and a coffee at 2 p.m. I'd say, oh, you need to go for a 30-minute nature walk with no cell phone at lunchtime. People would laugh at me. Yet it is ultimately the very best prescription you can give. That space creates distance, perspective, awareness, and an incongruent connective tissue that helps you discover that phrase you just shared with me, but also helps anyone discover any insight into what they're doing. And it helps you ultimately focus on doing the right things rather than simply grinding and doing things right.
So Neil, we're at the tail end for sure now. We could keep talking. Like, I mean, you and I are having a great conversation here, but I want to respect the time of everyone listening. I want people to pick up this book. Now that, I mean, we're recording this well before the book comes out, but as this episode airs, the book is now available. You are awesome. Where can people pick up the book and then keep up with you and your work, including your podcast? Make sure you mention that.
So thank you. The book's available everywhere, wherever you buy books, your local independent bookstore. You get it from a big box like you used to work at Costco, or I used to work at Walmart. You love the Chapters Indigo chain up in Canada, or you love the Barnes & Noble chain in the States, whatever. Or you buy from the gigantic online mega corporation, whatever it is, you can do it wherever way you want. It's called You Are Awesome: How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and live an intentional life. And if you head over to any of my stuff, neil.blog and eil.blog, or my podcast, 3books.co, 3books.co. Both those websites have been like I loaded them up with like just PDFs you can download of like chapters, introduction, table of just it's all like I put as much up as for free as I was like kind of allowed to by my publisher. I would happily honestly put the whole book up for free. And many times someone emails me and they're like, oh, I live in Bangladesh and I have the money. I'm like, here it is, because I just want the ideas to spread. But if you want to check it out, that's the best way. And like, yeah, so I just told you a whole bunch of stuff.
That's great.
That's
And the links will be in the show notes too. So if you just look in your podcast app of choice, or go to Productivityist podcast, you'll look at the podcast. I'll have the episode in the tail end here, so you can go to the URL directly and check it out. Neil, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been, in a word, awesome.
I love everything you're doing with this, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Once again, thanks to Neil for just doing what does, and for joining me 5 years ago as of this recording for an episode of this podcast. Back when it was called the Productivityist Podcast. Of course, now it's known as A Productive Conversation, and you can support the show by checking out the show notes wherever you get your podcasts, or go to mikevardy.com/podcast562. You'll get them there as well. But if you're doing this within the podcast app you're using, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or what have you, you can subscribe to the show there and get the show notes right then and there. And that way you won't miss a single episode of what's to come, including our fresh episodes every week, the Flashback Friday episodes that happen every week, and then our monthly series with my good friend Patrick Rohn called PM Talks, where we talk about things that are related to productiveness and managing your relationship with time. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors that you heard during the conversation today. Go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors to learn more about them. Click on any that resonate with you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this Flashback Friday episode of A Productive Conversation. Join me next time for a fresh, shiny, new episode, fresh off the presses. Is that what you say? Fresh off the presses in podcast format? Anyway, join me for that. That'll be coming up in just a few days from now. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.